Hi, this is Jason Edelman. In this video, we're going to walk through on how to use Docker to get Ansible up and running to automate Cisco Nexus series switches. In the first video, we walked through the manual install process that walks through several steps, doing several apt-get installs and several pip installs as well. So we're going to bypass that and use Docker instead to pre-package the application of essentially combining Ansible, doing a git clone, modifying a few different files. Right, so we're going to simplify that process, using Docker. All right, so we're back here at the GitHub repo, which is github.com/jedelman8/nxos-ansible. So we're going to go to the README file here. We're going to scroll down a little bit, and we're going to go to option 2, which is get your Docker on. So this does assume that Docker is already installed on your machine. If you don't have Docker installed, you can follow the instructions here. And the ones that I followed were for Ubuntu Trusty 14.04. And I just walked through each of these steps. It took a few minutes, nothing crazy, on a fresh Ubuntu install. All right. So we'll go back to the README. And so once Docker's installed, there's only a few things that have to get done. So we'll clear this out. So right now we don't have the proper image installed on this machine. So what we're going to do is we can verify this if we do sudo docker images. We see there's nothing there. All right, so we'll clear out of that. So we'll do sudo docker pull jedelman8/nxos-ansible. Okay. So this starts pulling directly from Docker Hub, and it's pulling from here. You can see this new URL up top, the full URL here. So it's my username / the essentially repository name from Docker Hub, and this even shows you the command up here that it has to be run on your machine to do the pull. All right. So this actually takes a few minutes to download because I think the image is 479 meg or so. So this does take a few minutes, and I'm gonna pause here and then fast forward through the video. Okay, great. So as we can see, the image has been downloaded from Docker Hub, and we can verify that by doing a sudo docker images. So we now see that the image has been downloaded. So now what we can do to get started and follow back along with the GitHub README. So we're going to go back here, right, look at our steps, and the next step is to basically do the infamous sudo docker run. You can actually do it based on image ID as well, but we're going to do it based on the repo here. So as soon as we launch this, you see here the command changed, and within a split second, we are now inside a Docker container. Okay, so if we do an ls, we see these directories, and we see nxos-ansible, and this is the directory that was cloned dynamically from GitHub. Okay, so what we want to do here is let's go into NXOS Ansible, do an ls, so we now see all of the files that came from GitHub. All right, so that's cool. So following along here, going into step 2, we want to make sure that we modify the etc hosts file, and we're going to use vim to do that. So we'll do sudo vim etc hosts. Come down here. We're just going to add a single device for now, 192.168.200.50, and we're going to call this N9K1. All right. So we're going to exit out of that, save that file. Come back here. We want to update the authentication file. Again, this isn't required, but I'd recommend it to streamline things for now. Okay. So we want to open up this file as well. So we're going to sudo, if we want the right path here. Yeah, we want to go back actually to our home directory, modify this, and the credentials here should be exactly what your switches use. And if you are automating several switches that each have a different name and password, that's not an issue. You can still use the parameters for each task within the Ansible playbook to specify the particular name and password. Okay. Escape out of here, :WQ, I'll save out of that, save there. The next part is preparing the switches. Again, that's pretty straightforward here. I'm just gonna come into here, and that'll be feature NX API. Do a show NX API. And trying to make sure that port 80 is listening, because 443 isn't supported yet on these modules. So if port 80 is there, we are in great shape. All right, and just remember that the IP address being used in the etc host file must match to the management 0 address on your Nexus switch. Okay. So the next phase, covers the next section, goes all into Ansible, talking about the terminology on playbooks, plays, and tasks, and so forth. But what we're going to do is just really copy and paste this playbook to execute within the container. Okay, so we're going to now navigate in CD. What path are we in here? Okay, so we have to go. We have to, yes, navigate up one, and we want to create this playbook. We want to do sudo vim Nexus Automation. This is the name of the file we're going to give it. Insert. So this playbook has a single play and 3 tasks. Walking through here, we're going to automate the single device that's in our Ansible hosts file. That essentially does end up mapping back to the etc host, but we still have to make sure N9K1 does exist in the Ansible inventory file, which we'll look at in just a second. And then there's 3 tasks. The first task calls the NX-OS interface module. We're going to iterate through 2 interfaces. We're going to default to those interfaces, and then in task 2 and 3, we're going to configure ETH11, ETH21 respectively by configuring a description and making the mode or the port an L3 port on ETH11. Then we're going to admin down Ethernet 2.1. All right. So we're going to save this. We're going to do a quick look at the Ansible inventory file. So we can see here that N9K1 exists here, and this essentially does map back to the etc hosts N9K1. Okay. And we need to have Ansible connection equals local here, right underneath all vars, because these hosts are not using native SSH to connect to as Ansible does by default for Linux servers. Okay. So in order to get this up and running now, what we have to do is just run Ansible playbook, specify the host file, and then basically run our playbook. So as you can see here, there's changes being made to these devices, and then if we went back to the device, we would say show run interface ETH11, ETH21. You see the changes being made, and again, we can always go back into the file, the playbook, and modify this if we wanted to quickly make. Didn't have insert on there. If we wanted to just say mode equals layer 3. Now if I want to do admin state equals up, we can change that, even though that's the default for admin states. That's mode equals layer 3 as well. We can save that. We can also run this in verbose mode. Oops. Wrong command there. Run this in verbose mode, which is going to show us the commands that Ansible is sending to each device. So we see there's changes being made because we're defaulting the interface again in the first task. We come back here. You see an L3 port on ETH21, and 1.1 has the proper configuration. All right. Hopefully that all made sense. If not, feel free to reach out. Again, blog is jedelman.com. Twitter is jedelman8. And feel free to contribute back to the project on GitHub with documentation or writing code.